Hey, my name's Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. Most of us don't even have gym memberships. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man, nor do we have a ton of time to train. And we don't need it because we're achieving amazing things without it. We are garage gym athletes, and these are our stories. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Hello.
And welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. So we're going to get into it here, but I have some updates on the sponsorship of the podcast. We are no longer sponsored by Blueberries. They actually didn't want to be a sponsor, contacted Blueberries as a whole, so we're moving to Broccoli. Broccoli is the new official sponsor of the podcast for all of its antioxidant benefits and anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer awesomeness. So get your broccoli at least 3 times a week, minimum. Do you eat broccoli?
Oh, all the time.
How much?
Actually, a ton, because when I buy it at the store, I chop off the stalks and then I dice up the stalks and put the diced stalks in my breakfast scramble.
The breakfast scramble.
The epic scramble that I have all the time.
Okay, people are going to want to know what's in the breakfast scramble.
Oh, all kinds of stuff. So it's generally has some bacon, and then there's onions, sometimes sweet potatoes, depending on what carb intake I want to have that day. Diced broccoli stalks if I have them. There's almost always Brussels sprouts, some sort of meat, and then like 3 eggs.
So are they goat eggs?
No. Why would they be goat eggs?
I'm just messing around, man. That sounds delicious, though. I eat a lot of broccoli. If anyone knows what I eat for lunch and have been eating for lunch for 4 years, you could go to my Instagram account and look at meal prep. It hasn't changed that much. I don't do, I pretty much do the whole thing. I change it up a little bit here and there, but I eat a lot of broccoli as well. Pretty much every day for lunch. Broccoli is there. All right, so broccoli's the new sponsor. Eat some, get better. Now let's get into Murph. This past week for me was Murph and DiCarlo. So yeah, that was awesome. I'll just give a quick update on that. So I did Murph with a vest, around 29 minutes, and then I immediately, basically no rest, went into the workout. DiCarlo, finished it somewhere in the 50 to 60 minute range. I don't remember. I think it was like 53 minutes. And that was just a lot of brutality packed into 90 minutes of continuous movement. But, everyone listening knows about DiCarlo and that workout and what it was for. So I wanted to take it to a new level there. And it was great. It was a good workout, good training session.
How much did you consume after all of that?
Dude, I ate so much food. I was so hungry. And
that'd be the perfect day to have one of your burgers.
That would be. That's a lot of work, man. Like that custom homemade burger thing that we go through, man, it takes a long time to make all that. But I want to talk about kind of the fuel I had leading up to that, because that's a good segue into this fuels course and a lot of what we've been talking about. But on that same note, I just wanted to mention, when I first started, the very first time I did a year of Murph, I would be absolutely wiped out at the end of the day. Just ready for bed. Let's sleep. I'm exhausted, physically exhausted. But I hadn't been that way. I'm never like that anymore after Murph. But after Murph plus DiCarlo, I felt that way that night. I was pretty freaking exhausted. I couldn't keep my eyes open around 9 o'clock, starting around 9 o'clock that night. But anyway, I want to talk about fuel. So this is our fuels course is coming out, since this is being published on Monday. So it's really coming out tomorrow. And if you can still get on the pre-release list, you can go to into3fitness.com. It should still be there. If not, then I'm sorry you missed it. You'll have to get it next time we open up. But the fuels course is all about kind of dialing in your specific fuel for your brain first and then your performance second. And hopping to performance, what I've done is, we going back to keto. And Joe, I know you experimented with the beta version of our post-workout meal calculator. And that's where all this kind of started is I went down this rabbit hole of finding out which energy systems and which percentages of VO2 max and heart rate zones correlated to which type of macronutrient or energy usage. And that sounds kind of crazy, but it's true. Our bodies use different fuels at different times and at different intensities. And so this whole standard post-workout or standard pre-workout meal is just kind of bull. Everyone operates a lot differently. And how many different athletes I had run through the beta test for some of this fuels course stuff is crazy, because we could be doing the exact same training. Like, we could both be on hard to kill track, similarly, similar fitness levels, but we just operate at different intensities and different levels. It doesn't make any one person better. It just means that we're different and we need to fuel differently. And that was a huge eye opener for me, because it doesn't mean, hey, we're basically doing the same training, we should basically have the same nutrition. It's going to be different for everybody. And once you figure that out for yourself, things really start to take off. And some of the principles are the same. It's just going to change in small amounts for each person. And I went live in the Garage Gym Athlete Facebook group to share kind of like what my pre-workout fuel has been for Murph. And it comes down to 75 grams of blueberries, about 10 grams of brain octane oil from Bulletproof, which is like a pure MCT oil. And then half a scoop to 3/4 a scoop of Equip Prime Protein. And that's it. And I mix it with a little bit of water, 15 to 20 minutes before. And this is far beats out any stimulant, like any pre-workout supplement. That's where a lot of people go, is they want to have this like pre-workout drink that just helps them crush a workout. But stimulants, if I had to give you an example, is kind of like nitro or nitrous in a car. It's like you can hit it and it's going to make you go faster for a little bit, but you're still like, if you're supposed to have premium gas in there and you have shitty gas, it's not really going to help you in the long run. And that's the difference between having good macros versus like just fueling up with coffee. Because we get that question all the time, like, should I drink some coffee before my workout or whatever? And it's like, you need to fuel with your macronutrients first and fuel properly. And I think properly is where this fuels course comes in, and where everyone's been getting screwed up. And ever since I've dialed things in pre and post workout, I've been religious about it for several months now. And it has helped my performance so much that I feel like a different human being during the Murph workouts, during tough workouts, and even after. So it's been really great, and I'm excited to push a lot more information out about that. But the only other thing that I took into consideration, I knew I was going into a workout that long, is I had an electrolyte drink about an hour before the workout, and that's my special juice, you always joke about. So I had my homemade electrolyte drink, and then I also made a second one of those to sip on during the workout if I took short breaks or whatever. And having electrolytes dialed in with your macronutrients or fuel, as I'll start calling it for pre and post workout stuff, it makes a world of difference. Like, I used to think that some workouts were just tougher, and so you felt worse or you didn't perform as well. And I just really don't think, if you have everything dialed in and you're really consistent about it, that's not really the case.
So no carb rinse.
I have not been doing the carb rinse, man. I just I'm too on board with not tricking my body and just giving it what it needs.
Yeah, that's actually what kind of what I wanted to bring up anyway, is that your workouts and stuff is more about the long haul, versus I feel like doing a carb rinse is like, okay, I really, really want to, or get this PR. I really want to kill it on this, 110%. So I'm going to carb rinse on this one, but it's not something that you should do every workout, because you don't need to break your governor every workout. Yeah,
we'll talk a little bit about this in today's study, but your body gets accustomed to things. Like, it can get used to almost anything. I mean, just look at everyone out there who's eating really crappy food all the time. Like, your body does its best to adapt and just tries for multiple decades till it no longer can adapt and you get a disease or sick or whatever. But like, your body can adapt to new things for very long periods of time, in both directions. So doing something like that, I feel like you want to leave that in the tank for when you need it and not make a habit out of doing it every day. That's my 2 cents on something like carbohydrate rinsing.
Yeah.
All right, other announcements is just we are coming up on season 8 of the Garage Gym Athlete podcast, so we're looking to do a few things. You know, those listening who've been around for a while, we like to interview athletes. That's how this podcast got started originally. And we're going to do some reattacks or revisits. So if you've been on the podcast and you want to come back on the podcast, maybe update us on it. And I don't care if you were in season 7 or season 1. Really, just if you want to, it's been, more than 3 months. If you want to come back on, update us, tell us what's going on. We'd love to have you. So just email us. You can email support@into3fitness.com, probably the easiest, quickest way to get a hold of someone. And or you can shoot me an email, reply to any email you've ever received from me, and I'll get it. It just may take a few days. Warning, right? Like this disclaimer. So feel free to email me. It just might take a little bit to get back to it, and we'll get you scheduled to be on the podcast. If you're not a reattack and you just want to be on the podcast because you think that'd be cool, and you want to, go back and listen to some other episodes so you can hear kind of the process and the flow. But we're gearing up for scheduling people for the next podcast season, and if you want to be a part of that, please let us know. We'd love to have you on. All right, man. What's been going on in your world as far as training and whatnot?
Well, we are well into what I'm calling spring leaning. I think I'm going to market that.
Yeah, I saw it. So we have like show notes that we kind of, I was like, oh, a typo. He has a typo on there. I almost corrected it because I thought you meant to say spring cleaning, but
no,
spring leaning.
I haven't seen anybody else learn it or use it. But it's basically just kind of dialing in our training, nutrition, and all that stuff just to really get even cleaner. And like, I hate to use the term lose weight because it's not like I'm going up for a weight loss goal. I just want to maybe dial in a body composition some and free up any inflammation that's been lingering and stuff like that. And been doing a lot of PT, doing some extra stuff like getting massage at my PT as well. But I mean, we already eat 95% what you would consider whole 30. So it's like our diet doesn't clean up too much more, but this might be no big deal to you because you don't really drink, but we've had 0 alcohol in like 5 weeks, which it's not like we would drink much on the weekend. It would be like 3 drinks on a Saturday afternoon just because we're at home reading, and then we're usually done by dinner, hydrating by then. But so completely alcohol free for about 5 weeks. I'm probably going to still go for another 3 or 4. We'll see, because I don't think anything is coming up.
It's amazing what cutting alcohol out can do just in general. Probably not for you if you don't drink a lot, but just people who do drink. A lot of people are in the habit of like get off work, have 2-3 beers every night. Cutting out something like that is because if you have 2 or 3 beers a night and you're say like a big dude, to be honest, like it's not like at the alcoholic level. Like that's not a problem. It's not necessarily a problem, but it's probably affecting you more than you realize from a weight gain standpoint, from a sleep standpoint, just a lot of other issues that people are generally unaware of. Because if it is 2 beers, I don't think that you have some sort of problem and need to go to rehab, but it is affecting you a lot. And a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah. And for the longest time, most of this year, it was like we never had alcohol on training days. Just because I know how it affects, but we train 5 days a week at least. So it's not like we were drinking all that much, but we just went to complete 0 and it's been good. And then also adding in some other runs. I mentioned wanted to do trail runs last week. Well, we actually did a trail run this week. We did 3-minute intervals for about, I forgot how long. It was close to an hour of 3-minute intervals, but on a trail. And that fatigued my legs so much more than I was expecting. Like, I don't know if it was just because it was at the 3-minute mark or because of the trails. Like, there was only one actual serious hill. But yeah, halfway through, I could feel my legs were starting to drag and even getting a little sore.
Interesting, man. I wonder why. Maybe you just haven't been conditioned to the trail runs in a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I always figured it was, trails, there's always going to be some variability, but I figured it was because, like, normally I do a lot of 90-second ones, and at 90 seconds I can go about 90%, but then trying to keep up a high intensity for 3 minutes. I was still trying to keep it at a high intensity for all the 3 minutes, and I think that just took its toll after a while.
Yes, high intensity for that long will definitely do something to you. Cool, man. Well, for me, really, I posted on Instagram. I'm got like an ice bath set up. So I went to Tractor Supply Co. and bought one of their, I think it's like a feed trough, to be honest. I don't know what they, I'm not a farmer.
Stall mats, feed troughs.
I don't know what they use it for, but it's got to be water for animals or something like that. And
Tractor Supply is the unsung hero of garage gym athletes.
Dude, it truly is. I think they caught on to the garage gym world getting mats, and they charge more now, but it used to be a lot cheaper. Anyway, I've been doing some ice baths, and they've been a lot of fun. I did 2 in the past week, which is more than I plan on doing, but I just want to play around with kind of dialing things in, like how much ice, the ice to water ratio for temperature and everything. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today in the study. But the first time I did it, I didn't really use enough ice, but it was still a pretty good challenge. And so the second time I used a lot more ice. I don't know how cold it was, man, but I think it was just above freezing. Like, I think it was in the 30s, like high 30s, something like that. It was really cold. And I decided to stay in for about 8 minutes, I think, the first round. And then it wasn't hot outside that day. Like, we had a storm and stuff. And so then I got out. I was really cold. And I typically do 2 rounds of it. And you really only need to do 1. Like I said, we'll talk about that in the study today. I was like, I'll go for another round. And so I got back in. And about 3 minutes into it, I started shaking, like, uncontrollably. And I was like, this is probably not this is not like what we're supposed to be doing for recovery. This may be, because I don't have an actual temperature gauge, so I don't know what I'm at. I know the temperatures that it needs to be at, but I don't actually know where it's at. So it was definitely way too cold. And then I shivered like that for about a half hour afterwards. So I maybe got a little bit too cold, too fast. But let's talk about how to do it the right way, some of the studies and research behind it, and to be honest, whether or not you even really want to do it. I'm going to talk about at the end why I do it, and it doesn't have a whole lot to do with recovery, to be honest, even though that is a benefit, but not the big reason I do it. So let's break it down, get into the study. The study this week is called Recovery from Exercise-Induced Muscle Damage, Cold Water Immersion versus Whole Body Cryotherapy. So real quick, the difference, cold water immersion is simply submerging the body in cold water for about 10 minutes after exercise. And then cryotherapy is exposing the body to very cold air in the same attempt to recover better from exercise. Have you ever done one of those cryotherapy things? Talking about like those, they put you in like one of those circles and they have like the cold
No.
Yeah.
It's just like cold air blasting on you,
yeah,
kind of.
Some sort of cold, it's like a gas. I forget what it is, but it gets super cold and like negative 200 degrees or something like that on your skin, and it's supposed to be pretty crazy. I've never done it though.
No, never. I haven't really experimented with much of any of those recovery things. I kind of want to.
Yeah, my brother bought me for Christmas like a 10-pack of those, like at this place nearby. I've just still never done it. So
yeah, just bought a trough instead.
Yeah. Anyway, so pretty cool stuff, guys. And the main thing that's going on is muscle damage and inflammation typically occur after a training session. And all this is really doing, all it really does is a method to decrease inflammation, right? Like, that's the real thing. We could get into vasoconstriction and blood flow and everything else, but that's all it's really doing. There are a lot of mechanisms on why cold exposure helps with recovery, but there's this like fine line. It was pointed out in this study, and it's also normally pointed out when it comes to inflammation, is you want a certain amount of inflammation and you don't want too much inflammation. When it comes to, I'm not talking about in general from eating bad foods, I'm talking about specifically muscular damage, because I read a long time ago, supplementing with vitamin C, and it was like vitamin C can really help with recovery, but too much vitamin C and there's not enough oxidative effect from like endurance training to see the same results that endurance athletes would. So like everything has to be balanced, and that's just probably goes for life in general, is like you need a little bit but not too much. So anything that we talk about, any study, typically shouldn't be you shouldn't go overboard with it. It's just tools in the toolbox, like I was saying with the carbohydrate rinsing, when to use it and when not to use it. So what they did, they measured 3 different markers. Let's see, it was a counter movement jump, basically a soreness level just reported by the individual, kind of like an RPE type thing, and then creatine kinase, which is an enzyme that goes into your blood after muscle damage. And so they're measuring all those markers to see who recovered faster. They would do it immediately after exercise, and there were a bunch of like different markers. People couldn't be injured, they had to be fit, all these different things. And let's see, they would 5 minutes after the resistance training, they'd immediately go into these different recovery protocols, and then they'd measure them at 24 hours, 72 hours, and then they'd do 2 weeks off and do the whole thing over again. So anyway, that's the whole study. Basically, they make somebody work out, and then they do either cold water immersion or cryotherapy, and then they would measure those different things at different markers, different levels. Any questions about how the study was done? Did you feel like I explained it well enough?
Yeah, I think they pretty much nailed it. Basically just comparing which cryo or cold therapy would work best.
Yeah, and so what they found out, and we have, because I want to get through this study where we could kind of talk about some other stuff, related studies, is that by far the winner was cold water immersion over cryotherapy. So getting in the cold water, the cold pool, or whatever that is, way more beneficial as a recovery method as far as the markers that they took, way more beneficial than cryotherapy. So if you're kind of debating ever between the two of those, then you might want to go with cold water immersion. Let's see. Then now the last thing I want to point out, which I think is very interesting. So moving away from that study, just looking at recovery methods in general, the active recovery. So you're familiar with active recovery?
Yeah, this is actually something I saw in the study that piqued my interest.
Okay, so you give us a quick breakdown of just like what is active recovery, and maybe how you participate in active recovery at times. So
it's doing kind of a low intensity, either cardio or some sort of body movement. It gets your heart rate up slightly, but you're not exerting any sort of force. I mean, you might sweat a little bit, but think of it as the best way to increase your blood flow all throughout your body to help you recover.
Yeah, and when you're talking about recovery, it's all about blood flow. Blood flow is very, very important. And they've done other studies, and this is why I think it's really important to bring up. So they've done, covering the one study that says cold water immersion is way better than cryotherapy. Got it. But now there are a couple other studies, and I'll link to them in the show notes. The show notes are now being published at into3fitness.com if anyone wants to dive into those with different links to the studies. But they've done a couple other ones where they would have people do low intensity walking or cycling. And what they found is that low intensity cycling for 10 minutes after every session is actually way more beneficial than cold water immersion therapy. So if we had to rank them in order now, it's number 3 would be cryo, number 2 is cold water immersion, and number 1 is this simple 10 minutes cycling at a very low pace or walking. Just some of the studies did cycling specifically for this very low level aerobic form of exercise. And so what happened? Well, after 12 weeks, the cycling group increased muscle mass and strength of the lower body to a significantly greater extent than CWI. And then to go one step further, it says the authors measured anabolic signaling by examining targets of let's see, I skip all that. The pathways, mTOR, I'm going to skip all that. It's found that the subjects in CWI had significantly attenuated anabolic signaling, like diminishing muscle protein synthesis and lower hypertrophy strength gains over 12 weeks compared to cycling. CWI had resulted in lower hypertrophy and strength gains over 12 weeks. And that was the main point I wanted to get at, was this fine line of too much versus too little. So there is definitely a place for cold water immersion therapy, but in the study where they compared, cycling and cold water immersion therapy, what happened was the cold water immersion done on a daily basis made people gain less muscle mass and less strength over 12 weeks, as opposed to the people who followed up a strength session with a very simple and easy 10-minute bike ride. And I think that fact alone is going to make people almost want to stay away from cold water immersion therapy altogether. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if it should make anybody stay away from it, just because I think it's just one is better than the other, but they're both good.
I know, but it's saying that cold water immersion therapy actually hurt strength gains and muscle growth. So would you voluntarily do cold water immersion therapy every day and risk less muscle growth and less strength gains?
Definitely not every day, and cold water immersion just sounds terrible.
Would you do cold water immersion therapy in general? Let's talk about that.
I would try. I mean, when I was back in college and doing stuff, I used their athletic training room, and I would do it for like my lower body or my lower part of my legs, but I didn't go up to the chest. I didn't go that far. That would be something different, something special.
Yeah, and it is pretty painful. So I'm just gonna kind of give the overall takeaways, and then we can kind of move on to some other stuff. But what I really wanted to point out in all this stuff, so you guys kind of have the science now. We'll link to the studies if anyone, because you can kind of get away from this, like, well, what should we be doing? I see a lot of people doing ice baths and all this stuff. Like, what should I be doing? What you should probably be doing for recovery is just doing low-level aerobic exercise, because to be honest, ice bath is kind of a pain in the ass. Like, I have to go buy the ice because I'm not going to invest in one of those things that's just like continuously running. So I have to go buy the ice, fill up the thing, do it. It's kind of a pain, right? Versus I have 3 different bikes in my garage. I could hop on one at the end of the training session and ride for 10 minutes. And that's actually what I've been doing the last several weeks. Is at the end of my workout, my cool down is I get on the bike and ride like at a very slow pace for 10 minutes with like my shirt off to also get vitamin D. And I'm so white, 10 minutes is probably enough for an appropriate amount of vitamin D. So that's the main takeaway. But then it's like, okay, when should I use cold water immersion, and why am I doing it? Cold water immersion is great for like a really hard session if you need to recover quickly, and especially if you have something else coming up. Like if you want to be able to hit another training session that day or the next day for some reason. A lot of people just training to train don't run into that situation very often where they're like, no, I need to be at peak performance tomorrow, but hey, maybe you got something going on at work and Murph was a little bit harder than you expected. Like, it's a great tool to have in the toolbox. It's not something I recommend doing all the time. I'm going to be doing it probably every other week. And the main reason I'm doing it is just to adapt to stress, to help my body adapt to stress better. I like to put myself in these uncomfortable situations and see how I handle myself. And so my reasons for doing it have very little to do with physical and almost 100% mental. So just psychological, like, what does my breathing do when I'm in a panic state, when it's too cold? How do I control that? How do I control my mind when I want to get out? Like, all these things. Those are the reasons I really like to do it. But my main recovery efforts are more low-level aerobic and getting some sunshine and all that good stuff. Yeah,
I think just like you said earlier on, it's just another tool, and forever when you're going to use which. For most of our athletes, it's definitely best to just do low level cardio, some sort of long walk, something like that. But if you're, hitting up 2 Meet Yourself Saturdays, maybe you should take a plunge.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did, just because I didn't want it to be as bad as it possibly could be. And I got a lot of questions about people. I post something like on Instagram. People ask me questions, shoot me messages, and they're like, "Do you recommend that I start doing this?" And my answer is actually no to most people. I'm like, no, like you really don't need to start doing an ice bath. It's just, you got to really find out why you're doing something and then maybe execute it. And, that kind of goes into our topic this week, that is just recovery in general. I wanted to talk about recovery, and I want to first jump into our recovery game real quick, because I think it's really important. Any athletes who are not a part of our Garage Gym Athlete programming, you're not familiar with their recovery game, so I'm going to explain it. Any of our athletes who are part of our programming, what I've learned, because I can see the data on the backside, a lot of you don't use it in its entirety. You know, people forget, or maybe they just don't plug it in. But I can tell you, when I'm following the recovery game that we created on a daily basis, my life just in general feels better. So I'm going to go over it real quick. So we have kind of a score based off of how hard the workout was, how many points you go down, and then you have to bring your points back up. And so here's each one of our recovery points. So did you get 7+ hours of sleep last night? That's a point. Did you consume 50 to 60% of your body weight in ounces of water today? That's a point. Did you eat 2 or more healthy meals? That's a half point per meal. Total 1 point you can get. Did you take 2 maximum recommended supplements that will aid in your recovery? And we're normally talking about things like turmeric, magnesium, vitamin C, stuff like that. And normally a last resort too. Supplements aren't going to help you a ton, but we've already talked about that. Did you complete both a warm-up for at least 5 minutes and cool down for 5 minutes? And you have to do both to get the point there. Did you do any additional extra credit light aerobic work, 10+ minutes today? So yeah, we've had the recovery game for, I don't know, since like 2017, I think, or something like that. And, it's based off of these studies that we're just now talking about on the podcast. And then wildcard recovery is things like cold water immersion, cryotherapy, massage, like you've been doing at physical therapy stuff. And we just recently added, did you get adequate sun exposure? Because how much, and we could probably talk about that as another study too, but how much vitamin D helps performance. There are new studies emerging about that, not just being good for you. There's a lot already about vitamin D in general, but helping with your performance specifically. So that's our recovery game. And following that, those markers will help you a lot. But there are a lot of other things that we can look at with recovery, man. And I'll kind of throw it over to you to let you dive into it a little bit more.
For how I approach the recovery game, or
just recovery in general, man. What metrics are you looking at? How do you treat your recovery and approach it? What have you found works, doesn't work?
So yeah, it's always completely situational. I don't do the same thing every day. Since I've been doing the quote recovery game for, however long we've had it, 1.5 years now. I don't necessarily follow it to a T, but so you even got into Whoop yet, but I'll look at my resting heart rate and heart rate variability, and depending on those, it depends on how I kind of treat that day. So if my heart rate variability is pretty low, then I kind of know that I need to eat, or that I need to eat a lot more food, or drink a lot more water.
So let's talk about that for a second. So for people who don't know, that's basically how Whoop is. Whoop is taking your sleep performance last night, and Whoop is just a wearable. For anyone who doesn't know, the Whoop is just a wearable, helps you calculate recovery. You can also do these things on your own without the Whoop, but it's calculating sleep. It's taking that, and it's calculating your resting heart rate, and it's also calculating your heart rate variability. So those are the 3 main metrics, really the only metrics it takes into account that you're allowed to know about in the Whoop for your recovery. So now that people know that, I'd like to know if you are off on one of those markers. You're saying you adjust with food and hydration. So tell me a little bit more about that.
What do you mean? Listen for heart rate variability?
So if you have a really low heart rate variability, what's your first course of action?
Usually drinking more, and I'll take because it's the first part of the day, I'll drink more, and you do some sort of electrolyte supplement. And then because I fast in the morning, I'm still going to fast for a while, but I might include more carbs into my shake, like 3 carb. And then my scramble's still pretty much the same, but I'll try and incorporate a little bit more throughout the day, food-wise, because I do know some days I'm pretty low on calories. I'm not counting right now, but so I'll just try and subtly add throughout the day, and 3 carb is usually those are the days that I add that in.
So you've been using 3 carb as a supplement?
Yeah, on and off every once in a while, and I'm also doing this new thing because my physical therapy appointments are at weird times. It's like right at my 14 or 15 hour window, which is usually when I start my workout. So that means my workout's delayed another 2 or so hours. So now I'm starting to have and this is when I look at heart rate variability, I'll have a protein shake before I go. And if it's a little bit lower, then I'll put 3 carb in the protein shake before I go.
And have you seen this directly correlate to improved heart rate variability, resting heart rate, overall recovery when you take those steps?
The next day, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because, I mean, it only processes it for the next day, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can even, so there's some days just looking at my metrics now that kind of go up and down a little bit because I adjusted one or the other. And then As far as resting heart rate, if it's a bit higher, because I kind of know what my average is because I've been tracking it for almost 2 years now.
Yeah, it's like 30, right?
It's in the high 30s, yeah. What I should be looking for. But if it's higher than normal, then I know it's because I have some sort of inflammation going on throughout my body. Something hurts, and sometimes I can feel what hurts. Like that's how I started going to physical therapy as well. And this is when the low intensity cardio recovery needs to get played in. So whenever my heart rate's a little bit higher, I know I need to get moving around more. I need to walk. I'll instead of like sitting in a chair, I'll sit on the ground and I'll sit in different like stretching hip positions. If it's a rest day, I'll do some sort of low intensity, dog for a walk or go for a jog type of thing. Generally it's because of how clean it eats. It's not like gut inflammation, but I might even on those days have some sort of something fermented.
Okay.
To help.
So and the reason I'm kind of like quizzing you about it is so this is what I really like about Whoop is it almost trains you to be a better athlete over time, and you've been using it for a really long time. Just slightly shy of how long I've been using it. I think I got mine like a few months before you, and it really does train you to be a better athlete, and that's why I'm asking because I've done a lot of the similar stuff. So just to kind of recap some of this stuff, if you feel like your heart rate variability is low, your action steps the next day are typically more food, more protein in the right amounts, and more hydration and electrolytes. And if your resting heart rate is a little bit higher than normal, you typically attribute that to perhaps some sort of inflammation. So you try to get more movement, blood moving, and then something anti-inflammatory in the diet. Okay, awesome. And there's not much you can do about sleep. If your sleep's jacked up, then you got to sleep more, right?
Pretty much, and you can't really make it up. And it's like, and if it's like really bad, and I don't typically pay attention to the actual recovery score percentage unless it's like in the red. And if my sleep was terrible, then I might like think about skipping that day. But I'll still do whatever things I need to do for the other two. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I like to talk about Whoop, but at the same time, I'm not wearing the Whoop as much anymore. I'm only wearing it. I'll wear it for I like to track during like the Murph workout and have some of that data and everything, but I'm not wearing it 24/7 anymore. Right now, I've been taking some time off of it. One, because I've been trying out Apple Watch to see if I could pull all the same data, which you really can with an Apple Watch. It's just it doesn't give it to you in a pretty bow. You kind of have to go pull heart rate variability, go pull resting heart rate, download an app for sleep and hope that it's accurate. So it's a little bit more of a pain, but you can still track all this stuff with the Apple Watch. But another reason I haven't been wearing the Whoop is because what I was saying earlier is the Whoop has trained you and me to just be better, right? To do things to counteract recovery. But I feel like I've created all these habits from that, and I play the recovery game pretty religiously, and I've got my macros really dialed in fuel-wise, that if I wake up one day and it tells me that I'm not recovered, I don't feel like there's anything I could even do. At that point, it has to be some sort of psychological stressor, like actual stress, either from life, job, emotional, something like that. And those, like, it's good to know about, but I can't even do more breathing or meditation. I already do that stuff in the morning. So I'm literally have tried to counteract everything. And my recovery and all my metrics got so stable that I didn't feel like it was producing anything. Like I built up all these really amazing habits. So Whoop was really beneficial for like 2 years. And now that I have those habits in place, there were no big surprises on Whoop anymore that I didn't feel like I could make any adjustments. So I haven't been looking at it, but they did add some other cool features. And I think they're adding even more as we speak, but it's really cool to dive into all that stuff. But what I do think that people need to look into is, another thing I point out is urine color in the morning is another thing I think that everyone should look at. When you wake up in the morning, what color is your pee? If it's really dark, that's not good. Especially if you're training a lot. Like if you're training a lot and you have really dark urine in the morning, that's not good. You're not drinking enough water throughout the day. And then also there's that subjective feel. Just when you wake up first thing, before you do anything, just take a quick inventory of how you feel. before you look at any sort of recovery, HRV, anything like that, just ask yourself, if I had to rate myself on a scale of 1 to 5 or a scale of 1 to 10, like, how do I feel right now? And if you keep a journal of that, I think that that's really powerful and beneficial too, because knowing how you feel and then correlating that to how you performed, I think is the most beneficial metric that you could start tracking, because you're just going to learn a lot more about yourself in that process. You'll know when you wake up, hey, today is a high performance day, or today I feel like I might need to back off. And once you can start doing that stuff way more intuitively, I think that that's where you want to get as an athlete in your recovery efforts, is just to, because like we're talking about getting trained, like it's like the technology has trained us, but I would like challenge you. I don't know if you do this. I started doing it with Whoop a while back, is like try to guess my recovery score in the morning, like just based off of how I feel, and it wasn't an arbitrary guess after you start doing that for a while. You're like, today feels like, definitely in the green or in the orange or I mean, yellow or red or whatever, I think, have you done that?
Oh yeah, and I get disappointed because sometimes I'm very wrong. I'm like, oh man, I feel great today. This is going to be good. I'm going to be in the green, and it's like 53.
Well, and it's not a perfect match, right? Like I've talked about being like legit red recoveries and hitting PRs that day during Fit Week. Like it doesn't always like it doesn't match up to how your performance is necessarily going to go that day. It's really more of just an indicator of some metrics. That's cool, man. I like, I'm trying to think if I do anything different, like, because I track a majority of that stuff. I am leaning way more on the intuitive side of things right now, of just like, how do I feel, and measuring that against my performance. But also keeping all the data, but not looking at it yet. Like because I have all the data, but I want to just see if my guessing, or should I say mental inventory, is as accurate, or how accurate is it, with the actual data points. And that's my main point, is I think some people get too focused on any one metric. Like the Whoop takes into account multiple different things, right? And so it pops something out that's fairly well balanced. But sometimes people will just read a study that heart rate variability is a good indicator of something, and so they're only going to track heart rate variability. Well, that's kind of like, it's pretty arbitrary if you're not comparing that to anything else. You really have to have these other checks and balances. And I think the recovery game that I mentioned, if you're not tracking anything but you're doing all of those things, you're going to be okay. Even if you're not tracking your heart rate variability, resting heart rate, or anything, it's like, get enough sleep, get enough sunshine, get enough water, get enough food, take a supplement if you need it, do an ice bath every once in a while, boom, you're going to be really recovered and feel really good. Cool. All right, let's get on to the workout, man. What the Ruck?
One of the classics.
Have you done it before? Is this the one
Pretty
you
sure.
hurt yourself on? Or is that just a
no,
Ruck?
it was just a Ruck in general. But yeah.
All right. So what the Ruck? Let me see. Let me pull it up real quick. I think I have it here. So
this is the one that's 2 parts, and both of them are equally.
There's the buy-in, and that's what I have to pull up. I want to make sure I don't mess up the buy-in. So the buy-in is 60 kipping pull-ups, or kipping is allowed. You don't have to do a kipping. Then 70 hand release push-ups, 80 squats, 90 sit-ups, 100 burpees, and then you go on a 3-mile ruck. My competitors do 55 pounds in the ruck. Females do 35. Established athletes are male 35 pounds, female 25 pounds, and recruit, male 25 pounds, female 15 pounds in the ruck. So you could just wear like a vest or something like that. What the Ruck is the epitome of awful and deceptive. That buy-in is just so crazy. So what tips, tricks, strategies do you have for a workout like this?
So first, things that I don't think you highlighted, but there's no partitioning for the reps for this one.
Nope.
So you have to break those up as best as you can. So get a strategy rep for that one. You're not wearing your ruck during the movements. You only put the ruck on for the ruck. So those are 2 important things to do. So yeah, since you're going to be doing a crazy amount of reps for each exercise, you don't really have a break for those exercises. So break them up from the very beginning. Like if you don't think you can do 10 pull-ups for 6 sets for the 60 pull-ups, start with 5s, even if it's too low, because if you can handle more, then you're just going to rest less. But if you get to a muscle failure part, then it's going to be terrible, and you're going to be, slugging uphill for that.
Yeah, and I would say, so for that buy-in, what's going to happen for most people, you're going to get through the pull-ups, the hand release push-ups, the squats, and the sit-ups pretty fast. Then you're going to hit the burpee wall, because there's 100 burpees, and that's what it's normally like. Hey, that first part only took me a couple minutes, and then it's 100 burpees, takes forever. So mental game wise, don't feel sorry for yourself in that part of the workout. That happens a lot. The 100 burpees, you want to slow down, you want to take breaks, you want to do a burpee every 10 seconds. Like if you're going to do the burpees, kind of like what you were saying, Joe, is like get a tempo, but then stick to it. So because what the burpees are like squats on Murph. I always say people doing squats on Murph almost use it as a rest. They're going so slow. And that happens with burpees in this workout, as people do like one burpee, especially getting closer to the later numbers, like one burpee, walk around for a second, another burpee, stand up, another burpee. It's just really slow. So do 10 burpees as fast as possible and like commit to that. And then if you need to rest in between those sets of 10, then do so, but don't lose your commitment to the pacing or the rep scheme that you set out to do in the first place, and just get through it as fast as you can. Now, rucking in general, do you have any tips for rucking?
Well, for starters, don't just drop a kettlebell in a backpack and go. No. Lesson learned right there.
Joe hurt himself very badly doing that. It's pretty...
Hence, I'm doing so much PT right now.
Dude, it's been like a year, too. It's crazy.
I think that was just a straw that broke the camel's back to another issue. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so try and distribute the weight as best as possible. Pad your whatever weight you're doing. When I used to do rucks back when I was living in DC, I just filled it up with canned goods, and that distributed everything really well, and it was still pretty heavy instead of just dropping a single. Awesome. Yeah, it worked out well. So even if you have to instead of using one kettlebell, put in just like some random stuff and then some smaller weight plates just to distribute the weight, so it has a little more of a flow. And then stretch your calves, smash your calves and your Achilles before you start.
Yeah, I typically wear a weight vest, so 20-pound weight vest, and then do 35 pounds in the backpack, just because I'm pretty comfortable with the vest on, and I like that feel a little bit better, as opposed to 55 pounds right on my back. That can get really annoying. And then other than that, man, I would say try not to rest on the ruck. So the first time we did this one was when it was first created. Me and my buddy Ben did it, and it was really bad. It was like in the middle of summer, and it was really, really hot in Texas, and just quite awful. But I've really come to enjoy this workout because it's a new level. We've talked about heavy load long distance, right? Like I truly think that's the best way to build mental toughness. Is I really feel like that ruck is such a mental toughness push, and it takes a long time to do, and not breaking, like not taking breaks. And if you do, like if I ever rest on the ruck, I typically just lean forward and let the weight kind of like sit on my back. And that's normally all the break that you need for a minute or two. But don't take breaks, push yourself, and keep a good pace. And that'd be my last thing, is don't stroll. When I say keep a good pace, like a ruck is not like a literal like just slow walk with weight. That's not what a ruck is. That is a slow walk with weight. A ruck is putting a load on your back and trying to keep a good pace as you go. So, a quick walk doesn't need to be a run. I actually would not recommend running, even though some of you could pull it off. Just walk as fast as you can with weight on your back. And that is about all I have. Other than that, there's not a lot of tips for that one further. It's just put in the work and don't complain about it.
Yeah, I'd start off a little slow until you get into a groove, just because you're going to be recovering from the burpees.
Yeah.
But just like with running, I mean, usually in the beginning you're going a little slower, then you can find your pace.
And if you are one of our athletes, we just did this workout. 20 April is the date I have that we last programmed it. So pretty fast turnaround on this one, but I really like to see people's progress in a workout like this because it's such a good marker of both the mental and physical side of your fitness. So this one's really strong. And anyone who's been, these Meet Yourself Saturdays are tough with Murph, like I'm going to have to start doing Murph on Saturday and then Meet Yourself Sunday or something like that, or just run into Murph straight into the Meet Yourself Saturday workout every Saturday. But I might end up hurting something if I do that every Saturday. So I probably won't. But I got to do What the Ruck. So I'll probably do that one on Sunday instead of Saturday and do Murph on Saturday. But that's just me thinking out my schedule. Let's move on. So Broccoli is the sponsor, but like I said, we really do sponsor ourselves, and we do that through our programming at garagegymathlete.com. Joe, as I ask you every week, man, why should someone sign up for a 14-day free trial if they're not already one of our athletes?
So this week would be perfect. So by the time you're listening to this week, we are starting the last 4 weeks of this current cycle. And even though we program in 4-week increments, and this will be a perfect kind of on-ramp to get you ready into the next fit week. So we'll do 3 weeks where we're normal. We'll do a deload week and then a fit week to do a bunch of benchmarks. And then you'll be starting the next cycle in July, completely adapted to the training with good benchmarks set, and to have 12 solid weeks to really test those benchmarks.
Yeah, it really is a good time to jump in right before testing and everything. Some people like to jump in right at the beginning of a new cycle, and I think that's good and all, but I think it's cool to get like a week of the training in before, or like come in on a deload week and then go to like fit week. A few things that we will be testing, or that will be a little bit different this time for any current athlete, as fit week is generally testing. We will have optional workouts this time during fit week. So if you don't feel like testing or you don't want to test again, you can do the optional workouts that we're going to provide. So that's one slight change. And that's basically it. We got some cool new stuff coming with patches, but that's not worked out enough for me to talk about it on the podcast yet. So Just know that some patch information is coming with the next cycle. And lastly, if you like things like the recovery game, I mean, we've really tried to think about every single thing with our programming, and we constantly take feedback from our athletes. So we have an athlete brief of me or one of the coaches explaining every single detail of the workout. We have a warm-up called Block 0, tailored to that day. We have the workout broken into 5 blocks so you don't bust your time. We have cool down, some mobility. It's not like a full mobility program. It's just a mobility based off of that workout. And then also the recovery game, which I think is awesome and everyone should do all the time. It's just really, really well thought out. So if you guys want to be a part of something like that, where we're really trying to take into account every facet of you as an athlete and human being, definitely sign up for free trial. If you are one of our athletes, thank you so much for being an athlete, but don't forget about all the resources that you have access to and go use them. Enter in those points to the recovery game. So when I pull data, I'm not disappointed that only X percentage of the athletes are using a recovery game. You need to be using that and getting better. And the unfortunate thing about reporting is if you only enter in some of the data, I don't get it. That's kind of like a team builder error. Like on your sets too, for like squats, if you don't tell me if you don't enter in like your last, like say you got bored and moving on to the next thing and you only entered at 3 out of your 4 weights, I can't see the data for what happened in its entirety. So I can only get data from athletes who report everything. But from the athletes who do report everything, I really like the data that we do get. Maybe we do an episode about that one day. But that's it, man. Anything else from you?
No, don't think so.
Cool. All right, athletes.
Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.